The asset of using a growth target is it can be adjusted. As you get more data to inform that information, you can continue to move that up and up and up. And so it's very important when you get that data back, or as you're going through the process now, to really look at where did we start, what is a realistic, attainable goal for our students moving forward. So I thought the baseline data piece of this particular SLO really summarized the process. The teacher SLO implementation plan is also on that form. When you look in SharePoint and you start the process, this is something that we're going to look at on the platform itself and kind of explain to you why we felt like that was an important part of the process. This is a close-up of the data piece, so you can see it a little bit more, and the assessment piece. This particular SLO implementation plan, it won't look exactly like this on the platform, but if you'll look at the number 4, it says classroom baseline data. As the district wrote those SLOs, they looked at the district data. But because this is a teacher form, they need to be looking at what are my kids like in my room. And so this is a place that they can really determine and articulate that. What's the population of my students really like? Because my class is going to be different than my neighbor's class. And that's a very important piece I think that we missed, or that it wasn't as clearly defined as it needed to be last year, that connection. So that's why we added this piece. We also have the strategies there. The instructional strategies can be requirements of the district. They can be, okay? So some districts might have some initiatives that are non-negotiables. Everybody does this in our district. And if that's a non-negotiable instructional strategy, then it can be reflected on the teacher plan. They can include it. It also is a place where obviously the teachers are going to include information that they do themselves. This is just a way for them to sort of pull all that information together. Of course, evidence and the timelines when the targets are due, what they're looking at for that piece. These 3 parts of the strategies are going to be very beneficial as you move forward with the mid-year conferences, to be able to make sure that you've got some consistencies in place. So this is a check that we're going to be able to follow up with. I think that's going to make it a lot more user-friendly, so to speak, for the teacher. A lot of this information Carlene has talked about already. When we started taking the SLOs and you were putting them into the platform, was a very labor-intensive process. The good news about that is you're not going to have to do that again. There's a lot of work on the front end, but from here on out, that's going to be something you can go in and just very easily, revise. If you have to change a target, if you have to maybe change a description of an assessment, you're not going to have to go back from ground zero. So that was something we really wanted to make sure that we were doing for the districts. The other thing that we wanted to make sure and do was make that connection between the teacher plan and the district SLO more connected. It needed to be something that was part of their daily instruction. And so by putting it on the platform, we felt like that was a very efficient way to ensure they were using it, and also that, that you as the evaluator of the district was able to monitor that process. And then this also is going to help the communication between us and the districts and the teachers. Communication is something that we need to continue to make sure that is being developed and strengthened. And so anytime we can have an opportunity to make it where it's easier, that's certainly something that we want to do. One of the big things I think is the ease for the teacher and the evaluator, the ease of that SLO statement for the teachers. You're going to see where there were a lot of questions when we started doing the forms that the growth target was pulled out separately. There's a section where the growth target wasn't embedded in the statement itself, and it was a little bit confusing. The reason we set it up that way is because when it shows on the platform, they don't have to go all the way through it to get the target. They'll be next to one another, so it's going to be easier for them to see, and you'll see that piece in just a second. The target is still the most important part of the statement, but they needed to be able to see it visually rather than trying to go through all the language, so that's why we set it up that way. Another good thing, of course, is that in that teacher plan on the platform, as students progress or as things change different internally within the building, you can make adjustments on that. That's sort of a living document, so to speak, so you can make sure that it's being updated, that it's reflecting what the students need. It's not something you do and then kind of put it to the side. It's something you continue to go back through, once again, building the connection between the instruction and what we're wanting to accomplish. And this is something that can be monitored from the district by evaluators, and of course the teachers can see who's coming in and out of that process as well. So it's making once again the connectivity together. All right, take just a second and let's look at this particular part. You'll notice here along the top it's got the course ID, the course name, the standards, the pre and post, the baseline, the statement. On this example, the growth target is still here, and you can see that you can't hardly see it. You know, you really have to scroll down. So we were trying to make it very convenient for the teacher so in a glance they could see what their goal was. So that's why it's pulled out separately. So when they see this, this is what we had set up on the training site that we worked from and refined. It's going to make the most important, or the part of the process that the teacher needs to contact and look at most consistently on the front end. The other parts will be here. So the arrangement's not going to be exactly the same as you would see it on the form when you submit it, but it's organized from a teacher point of view. As I said, this is the implementation plan itself. There'll be sections for all the things that we just talked about. That's something that they'll be able to continue to go in and revise. You can set that up in whatever form or fashion you need for it to be in terms of updates and revisions for the requirements that you have within your building. We're very excited about this process. We really feel like that this is going to drill it down to the teacher level. We really need to make sure that the teachers are very involved with the process and understand the whys and the impact of it. And we feel like this is something that's really going to benefit them. As Carlene was talking about earlier, the mid-year conference is something that's very important. We reorganized it within the platform so that it went together more logically. Having the teacher implementation plan here is going to be something that's going to make it easier to have that data at your fingertips as well. So you can look at it and say, I see that you're using this strategy and this strategy. Your students have been able to improve in this area. Really be able to have those informed decisions during those conferences and throughout the school year as well. Professional learning opportunities. We have a lot of things going on with SLOs. I've talked to some of you here the last couple days through email prior to that. We're going to be doing some district data reviews. I'll talk in more detail about that in just a second. We're also going to be providing SLO overviews, half-day overviews for new districts regionally. And that's something that it sometimes can be an overwhelming process, so we're going to make sure that we can reassure the new districts coming on that it's something that's achievable, that it's important work, that it's hard work, but it's very valuable. We'll also be doing the new district trainings, and I'll go through that process for you in just a second. And then we will be continuing the content development trainings that we did last year, and I'll talk about some of the changes on that. Okay, the district data reviews. I'm going to come to your district or have you come regionally to where I am and sit down and really look at your data. Let's see what they did last year. Let's see what the general parts of the state. Let's see what your targets were. How was that effective? Where were your strengths? Really look at that information and have a discussion about what are some things we can do to support you in that process. Did you get the results that you wanted? What adjustments do we need to be making? And I think it's very important that we can sit down together with a small group and really look through that process and those steps. So that's going to be coming up. And as we've talked about, it's got to be sustainable. You know, you've got to get to a point where that's something that's just part of the culture of what you do. And so this is one of the ways that we're helping in that process. It starts in July. My first one actually is Monday. And the whole point of that is to be able to make decisions about revisions for SLOs. What do we need to do differently? We'll look at the results by teacher, course, school, all the different parts that go along with it, the measures, the strategies. If you had an area that was really successful, what do you attribute that to? Those sorts of things, just an internal a dialogue about how we can strengthen that process for you. With the new district trainings, as I said, we've got 2 weeks set aside in September where we're going to be doing half-day overviews with the new districts. They'll be regionally located, so if you've got some people in your area that are new within your school buildings and you would like for them to attend that, that's fine. We'll have plenty of room. I'll make sure that y'all get the information about that. We're also organized regionally, so this is sort of a new process for the SLO team because there's only like 5 of us for the whole state. And so, but we have assigned people to those different regions, so the person that you'll be dealing with will be the same person. So you'll have an opportunity to build that relationship, and the people organizing these region trainings will be the regional representative for that area. So once again, a way for you to make sure you're talking to the same person and having the same language. That sustainability piece, making sure that the people are at the table to get the information. And the new district training is going to be focused on the entire process, okay? It's not necessarily going to be focused on this is the assessment you're going to walk away with when the end of the 3 days it's done. It's how does that process work? What are the steps in place? What do we have created to help you with that? Let me go back to that for just a second. No, they have not yet. The first day is going to be in November. I can tell you that much. And as soon as we get our spaces reserved, we will let you know. The first date will be in November. That's really going to look at internally as a system, what do you need to do? Let's look at the courses that you have. Let's look at the courses that need to be covered. Let's sort of help you get an action plan. What are the next steps of what you need to be doing? The next 2 days will be at the first of the year, probably in January, and they're going to be back to back. So we can really walk you through the process of the table of specifications, the criteria table, all of those resources we have in place so that you have a good working knowledge about that. And then at the end of that, we'll be able to talk to you and figure out what are the next steps for your district. What is it that we need to help you strengthen in that process? And so we're designing it to make sure that we're meeting your needs and also giving you an overview at the same time. So that will be starting in November. It's a very good question. Okay, the content weeks will be starting. We've reduced the number of days from 4 to 3. We recognize that's a hardship to have teachers out of the building that long. And so we've been able to take that feedback and put it in place. Our first ones will be starting in September. They're going to be regionally done as previously. It's going to focus on item assessment, item development, and the goal is at the end of this process that we're going to have supports in place for all of the courses that you need. So that's very important. Some months we will be having 2 weeks of it, and as soon as we get those places confirmed, we'll let you know exactly where theirs will be as well. The calendar that we're going to be sending out collectively that Carlene referenced before will have the SLO information on it as well. Okay. Yeah. Carlene is going to, before we get to the question part, Carlene is going to walk you through the steps, and we'll talk about as what it looks like, and if you have questions, please at that point. Okay. How many of you have been directly involved with the submission process at your district? Have seen what these look like? Okay, that's about half. That's good. It's very good. Okay. The first thing that you're going to do when you log in here is go to the district. You're going to choose your district. As I said, once you make that choice one time, it's going to pre-populate. It'll be a drop-down box or a drop-up box in that case, I guess. And you can make that choice, and then you don't have to continue to go back to it. After that, we've got it organized by content areas, so you can go into those separate containers. We can provide access, so if you have your English Language Arts curriculum person that wants to be involved in the the submission of that particular content, we can give them access. If you have someone different for math, we can provide access for that person as well. So we're trying to give you flexibility as much as we could within the district. So go into the area that you want. We went into art, click on new and edit. It pulls up the very same categories that you had on the SLO statement. As I said, we've got a drop-down box here. That way you don't have to continue to put that information in. You can choose. From the form that we showed earlier, the example from Hall County, you can copy and paste into these sections. That way you don't have to do that part of the work twice, trying to make it a little bit easier. It's designed the same way. You got your SLO statement. Earlier I referenced the fact that the growth target was pulled out separately. Once again, we did that to make sure that it was visually easy for the teacher to see, but it's really part of the statement still. When we looked at the standards, as I said, next year we'd like to be able to have that an area where you can click on that and get the drop-down box as well. Because when you're looking at having assessments that are measuring the entire year, that's going to involve a lot of different standards, and we recognize that, so we're trying to make that process a little bit easier as well. We're looking at the commercially developed or the locally, regionally developed. That's important for tracking for art purposes, but also it's important next year when you come back to this so that it gives you a place to start with the process. What exactly, if it was a commercially developed product, where's the table of specifications, where's the criteria, those kind of things. It gives you an internal place to start. The description of the assessment, as we looked at earlier, this is where you tell us what the assessment is. If you're using dibbles, you can put something very simple down there as dibbles. Okay? If it's something that was regionally, locally developed, you could put multiple choice, developed by the item bank. You can make it as specific or as general as you need. We need to know that you're going through this process, but we're not going to be digging down to the very detail of what it is that you're giving to us. There's no wrong answer for a description of the assessment, okay? We just want to make sure that you've thought it through and that it makes sense. The section here at the bottom that talks about the attachment, the table of specification, and the criteria table, we put it under each one of the SLOs so that you could have that automatic connection with it. I sent some information out early, and we've had some questions about which statements need criteria table and table of specifications and which don't. So at the end of this process, we can talk through that if you have some specific questions about that. The purpose of the table of specifications is to make sure that the assessment is aligned with the standards and that it's measuring the amount of time you spent on it. The purpose of the criteria table is to make sure that you've looked at that assessment and made sure that it's lined up with what you want in terms of directions, balance of items. So both of those things are very important so that when those assessments are given, you feel comfortable with the results that you get. So the reason we require those is so that we can have that consistency and, once again, building that sustainability within your district. You go through that, you save. Then you can do another one in that same content area. If you're finished with this content area, you can click out of that process and go to the next one. We've got everything in here. At the very end, when you get to the district sign-off, the time that you'll be very excited about, I am sure. You go in there, you sign off. It will ask for a signature. You accept it, then we get notification that your SLOs are finished. So it's an automatic communication for us. Once we receive that information, then we know to go in, start looking at the SLOs, providing feedback, that sort of process. The SLO feedback section is something that we thought, once again, would help facilitate that communication piece. We'll be able to put information here. You'll be able to give information to us. It's going to be a way that's going to make that a little bit more efficient. Yep. We have already started that process. We actually have someone that's going to be taking the SLO submissions from email and loading them in for you. So we've started auditing them in the email process, in the form they were in the email, but they will be in the platform before you need to see them. Mm-hmm. Yes? Right. What we said initially was do them all at one time so that we wouldn't constantly be going back and giving you multiple sets of feedback. Because of the numbers that you have specifically, if you want to do them content by content, we're in the throes of that. So we're touching that information every day. So as new information comes in, we can do that. So if you want to do it section by section, you can at this point. Yes. Yes. Okay. Once we look at everything, we get to sign off as well, and that's a happy day for us, just as it was a happy day for you. To let you know that we finished everything, we've looked at it, and you're ready to go. We've got great things in place for the SLOs for you the coming year. A couple of things about this that I think is really going to help is, and things that we're learning as we go. The question that he had asked earlier about turning it all in together, can I do it by contents? We're trying to figure out what's the most effective way to communicate with districts and make sure that we're valuing your time and also being efficient with ours. And once we get through this first SLO submission process, we'll be sending out some surveys and getting some information from you once again to inform decisions for us in our internal processes. So those kinds of questions and issues that you have, sort of keep those in mind so we can go back and make further revisions, because this is designed to be a support for you, and that's exactly what we want it to be. And if you have issues that we're not seeing, we need to know what those are so we can make those adjustments. Does anyone else have any other questions? That was, just sort of an overview of the process.